right, good evening, everybody. This is awesome because we kind of knew that there'd be a lot of people here. You've got quadrupled what we've had in the previous two, so I'm sure there's lots of questions tonight. I'm going to go over just some information. We're going to just cover a bunch of things. It shouldn't take 10-15 minutes, and then we'll answer as many questions as we can. So, like Nick said, my name is Matt Miller, Fire Chief for the City of Hoquiam, and tonight we're here to talk about the Regional Fire Authority. And what is a regional fire authority? A lot of people ask, and it's a way for municipalities or cities to consolidate fire departments. We're different than fire districts. If you're familiar with fire districts, they can join together a little bit easier. The RFA is a function or an ability for cities to consolidate their fire departments. With that, why? So some of you have heard us probably or seen some of the videos or saw the flyer that's gone out there, but one of the big ones is economies of scale. I like to use the Costco effect when it comes to buying. Each one of our departments needs to buy gloves. Gloves are disposable, we can only use them one time, we have to throw them away, right? Well, I have to buy a case of gloves and maybe it costs me $50. Dave has to buy a case of gloves and it costs $50. Nick has to buy a case of gloves, it costs $50. Altogether, there are the ability to do the Costco effect and buy 3 cases for $100 versus $150. I'm not giving you exact numbers. We didn't go to Costco and run those numbers, but it's just an example of buying in bulk can reduce the pricing. We can also reduce some pricing when it comes to larger fire equipment and EMS equipment, specifically fire engines. Fire engines are very expensive pieces of equipment. They're pushing up $1 million nowadays. In the last 4 years, the city of Cosmopolis has bought a fire engine. The city of Hoquiam has bought a fire engine, and the city of Aberdeen has bought 2. As a whole, we would need to be buying all of those, and we wouldn't be buying them all at once. We have to follow multiple different areas that provide the rules for us. There's RCWs, there's WACs, there's LNI. One of the big ones is NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, and the Washington State Rating Bureau that comes in and grades us and tells us how well we're doing or how well we're not doing. And in that, they say that in every department, for every 10 fire engines you have to have 1 in reserve. So I currently have 1 fire engine in reserve in Hoquiam. Dave has 1 engine in reserve in Aberdeen, and Nick has 2 engines in reserve in Cosmopolis. Again, remember, $800,000 to $1 million piece of equipment. As one big unit, we wouldn't add up to 10 engines, so we'd only need 1 fire engine in reserve. So we could cut those down. So we wouldn't need the amount of equipment, rolling stock that we all have today. But since we're separated, we are required each to have those reserves. Again, as one bigger unit, we could cut those down. Increasing the amount of firefighters that are on emergency scenes. So going back to the NFPA, they recommend, it's a standard and not very many departments in the United States can meet it 100% all the time, but everybody strives to that. And they say on your typical average residential structure fire, you should have 14 to 16 firefighters on scene to fight that fire. Now, a lot of you were volunteers or know a volunteer. Unfortunately, not many places in Grays Harbor County has ever been able to hit that number. Us in Hoquiam and Aberdeen have revamped our response policy a couple of years ago, and we are close. We are pushing 14, sometimes 15 or 16, depending on if all 3 chiefs are right there at the right time. With this, we'll talk about the funding mechanism later because I know that's the big one. But with the increase in the funding mechanism, we are looking to add 4 additional personnel to the entire group of the RFA. With that, it'll put 3 additional entry-level firefighters into the daily staffing, which helps provide those additional firefighters to a structure fire. That 4th person would be a medical services officer. So with that, all of your Aberdeen and Hoquiam firefighters are EMTs, IV technicians, which means we can start IVs in your arms and give you fluids and draw blood, or paramedics that can administer the medications and put the tube down your throat, if any of you are familiar with any of that, and take it to the next level. We have a lot of training. It takes a lot of training to get those certifications. It also takes a lot of continuous education and training to maintain those certifications. So that fourth person would be in charge of that. They would still be a firefighter and they could still perform at fires, but that would be their daily function, is making sure we are hitting our required training. Adjusting resources based upon the high risk areas. So as a larger unit with all 3 cities, we can sit back, we can evaluate the higher risk areas of all 3 cities and adjust our resources. So if in Hoquiam right now, at my headquarters station, I have 3 people daily. But if we are, in 2 years, we're able to analyze the data and read the call volume and say all of a sudden there's a hot spot in downtown Hoquiam and that's where the bulk of the calls are, as a wide group, we're able to refocus and readjust our resources and put more in Hoquiam or in Aberdeen or Causey or wherever that might be. But with that larger group, we're able to shift our resources to cover those high demand areas. Leveraging the strengths of each agency. Each agency, all 3 of us have our bonuses and our downfalls, our pluses and our minuses. One of the things that we are looking forward to with this is that Aberdeen and Hoquiam have never had volunteers in 100 years. Cosmopolis does. They have the plan in place, they have the formation, they have the plans and how everything works to have volunteers. We don't know that. I'm gonna be straight up. I started as a volunteer. I couldn't run a volunteer program. I could try. Pretty sure it wouldn't be very successful for a while, but I could sure try. Cosmopolis has that program built, and we're gonna take that. That's something we're leveraging from Cosmopolis. In Hoquiam, for example, we've got a relatively new 100-foot ladder truck. That is a bonus to the RFA. So we're able to shift, and each one of us are gonna provide different bonuses to the RFA. Creating equity across the tax base. So right now, again, we're gonna get into the funding mechanism in a couple slides and we can answer questions later. Each city pays a different amount to their monthly water or to their monthly ambulance availability fee or utility fee. This would make it equal across the board for all 3 cities. Providing the same resources, the same function, the same service to all 3 cities all the time. And it would just be spread across the board, where right now it's 3 different amounts from each city. And enhancing our recruitment and retention. So many of you that have been to any of the planning meetings or heard any of our city council meetings know that it is becoming more and more difficult, specifically for Dave and I, to recruit and retain employees. I can hire somebody, they can come in, they can work for me for a couple of years and get lots of experience, and then they can go to some place like Central Pierce, which is Parkland, Spanaway, Puyallup, that area, and they can make $20,000 to $30,000 a year more and work about half as much. I can't compete with that. That makes it very difficult for me to keep people and or attract people. I currently have 2 positions open. I had 3 people apply for me. It's becoming very difficult for me. Nick has been trying to recruit volunteers for the city of Cosmopolis. He's up to 5 right now. He is still recruiting, so if anybody's here interested, talk to Nick afterwards. It's difficult to even recruit volunteers. If anybody is familiar with the area, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with Hump Tulips. Right, Hump Tulips? 1, maybe 2 volunteers right now. District 16 is at 0?
4 on the books.
4 on the books, but they don't respond. How that works, I don't know. But it's becoming very difficult, not just for paid people, but for volunteers to recruit. Our goal with the RFA is to create this larger entity that gives better promotional or advancement processes in an entity and help recruit and pull in volunteers and paid people and help keep our numbers up so that, right, well, how many people are you down right now, Dave?
5.
He's down 5, I'm gonna be down 2, or I am down 2. and we're both struggling to get those people to come in and apply for us. It's not a bad job. We're not gonna be millionaires. We're not gonna get rich, and it's kind of hard on the bodies after a few years, but it's a good job, and we're having trouble getting these people to come in. One of the bonuses that we look forward to is with the Cosmopolis volunteer program in place and recruiting, we're gonna spread those recruitment lines out to the entire RFA, which includes Aberdeen, Hoquiam, and Cosmopolis. Dave and I both receive probably 5 to 10 calls a year. Hey, do you guys accept volunteers? I just moved here. No, I'm sorry, we don't. Now we can expand those boundaries and start pulling them in, and our hope and our goal would be to train people coming in to be volunteers and then be able to have, hopefully, a larger group to hire from so that when we have a position to fill, we have this group that we can pull from. All right, is there, next one mine or am I done?
That's me.
All right.
So how is this plan different from the previous plans? So this has gone to Aberdeen and Hoquiam 2 previous times in the past few years. This year, the biggest, most noticeable difference is adding Cosmopolis, and I think that's why a lot of people are here tonight. With adding Cosmopolis, that's also adding a 5th station to the plan and the volunteer program, as Chief Miller has mentioned. So there's been a lot of adjustments when it comes to that. The funding mechanism has changed, so that was the most feedback Aberdeen and Hoquiam got from the past plan, was the previous funding mechanism. So Corey's going to talk more about that on the next slide. The governments, so within the previous plans as well as this plan, there's always been 3 elected commissioners. The difference from this plan versus the previous plans is all 3 commissioners will be at large. So it will be the boundaries of all 3 cities combined. The citizens can elect 3 commissioners. Before it was 1 from Hoquiam, 1 from Aberdeen, and then 1 at large. Now, because of the population difference, they all have to be at large, or we would have had to draw on commissioner districts, which would have put the majority in Aberdeen. So we wanted the commission decided to vote and have it at large. The transfer of assets, that language changed slightly, and that's mostly with adding Cosmopolis. With the police department moving into the fire station, we wanted to make sure that that was captured within the plan, so that as their new building's being built, there's still a place for them, and we are not having to worry about the RFA coming in and kicking the police department out of the building by any means. So those are the biggest changes in this plan, and Corey will talk about funding.
Fun part that everybody wants to hear, right? So when it comes to the RFA and how we figured out how to fund it, so we can't give you anyone exact cost because it doesn't exist. So what I did was I took the 2023 budgets for Hoquiam, Aberdeen, and Cosmopolis. I added the 4 positions that Chief Miller discussed earlier, and I created an estimated budget as to what it would cost to run the RFA. From there, you look at revenues, what can fund the RFA. So, $1.50 per 1,000 is on your property tax levies. This is reduced from the city and reallocated to the RFA. Ambulance utility fee. This is the monthly fee that you're currently paying on your water, sewer, storm bill. This is estimated to go up to around $50 per month. Ambulance transport fees, that's something that we're already doing. And then service contracts, so that's very similar to Aberdeen and Hoquiam both provide services to outlying districts, and those contracts would need to be renegotiated once the RFA is formed.
So the goals, what we're looking to do with the RFA is, the first thing is to at least maintain what we're able to do. Getting kind of into the weeds a little bit of the study that was commissioned by Aberdeen and Hoquiam when we first went down this venture was, what we're doing is not sustainable into the future, financially and operationally. So we really looked at it from how can we maintain what we have with the goal of hopefully improving the services that we're able to provide to the citizens, improving your safety, and also the safety of our firefighters as well. Better efficient and effective of operations. Matt kind of already referred to the NFPA standards about number of firefighters on scene to be able to adequately suppress a fire and other types of incidents. And with this plan, borders go away. It's not the silo of Cosmopolis and Aberdeen and Hoquiam. It becomes one brand new entity with its sole purpose to provide fire EMS to its citizens. What that does too is it allows, and again, Matt kind of referred to this, but allows us to be very fluid in our operations of being able to shift resources. And also to have resources respond in a more quick fashion. Example of this is going to be mutual aid requests. Again, we are three separate entities. We operate completely independent of each other. As one entity, we don't have to ask for help from each other. It's automatic. So in Aberdeen, as an example, my crews are all busy and another response comes in. Dispatch still dispatches us out because it's our call. I have no resource available, so we have to ask for help. So we ask Matt, we need help. Can you come respond? But it's not that simple. It's my on-duty officer has to call dispatch on the radio, say, hey, we're unavailable for that call. Request mutual aid from Hoquiam. Okay, then they go input that. That takes a couple minutes for them actually to get dispatched. And then Matt's officer has to decide, can we respond? Are they have the staffing and resources to help us? And if they don't, he's got to call back and say, oh, sorry, can't help, we're unavailable. Then my on-duty officer then has to go, okay, well, who's next? Let me call Fire District 2 or Montesano even, or whoever it might be, just kind of going down this list. As one entity, all of that's automatic. When that tone goes off, if all the Aberdeen units are busy, it automatically knows to go to either, depending on where the call is, to Matt in Hoquiam or Nick in Cosmo. You know, the system will be able to have a much quicker response. When we're talking quick response, it is very important, especially in structure fires, to get to the scene quickly. Fire burns very rapidly. We are already behind the 8 ball usually when we get that call, because the fire's been going for a few minutes. And fire doubles every couple minutes. And the stuff that is being burnt in the homes, it's not what was there 30 years ago. So it burns hotter and faster. So we're already behind the 8 ball in that instance. Also, you're going to get the closest response, the closest unit to respond to you. Without, again, that border is gone. It can be on the border of one of the cities. It doesn't matter what city it is, you're still going to get the closest appropriate response. Future growth within the organization. You know, I like to kind of think of this more, that retention and recruitment that Matt talked about, is people that I have lost to other departments. This is a theme. You know, if we had the RFA, I'd probably stick around a little bit longer. You know, it's just more opportunities for them with any larger organization. I hear this from potential employees that I interview. I had one today actually asked about the RFA and what's that look like. It is something that people look at as a larger department is more attractive to a lot of these entry-level positions we're trying to hire. So it really helps us with the growth within the organization. And as Matt referred to the volunteer component down here, that is a huge tool for recruitment for local talent, we like to call it. Right now, Aberdeen and Hoquiam, we don't really have a mechanism to get this local talent in the door, train them up ourselves, and use that as a hiring tool. Excuse me. And that's how Matt and I actually both started, was coming in as residents, living at fire stations, being volunteers, getting on-the-job training, and as I joke, blood vest now, 25 years later. So it's possible. So what's next? So ballot measure goes out, April 25th is gonna be the deadline for those to be returned. Should be out end of next week, if I remember correctly, is when the mailing is. As that goes out, it's gonna require a 50% majority to pass, and once that, if that happens, then the RFA will come into existence January 1 of '24. So at that point, we are all combined, the borders go away, and we're operating as one entity. If it does pass as well, the next thing actually that will happen is the election for the commissioners. So we can't do commissioners until we have an RFA. It's kind of the egg before the horse before the cart, I guess. So once we get that RFA that is going to happen, then the timing is perfect. Filing opens up shortly after this for those interested in being a commissioner for the RFA. Can throw their hat in the ring there, and those elections will take part in the general election in November. So with that, that's our kind of brief, 30,000 foot view for you. And before we get any farther, there's plenty of chairs in the front if anybody wants to sit down. Or not, okay. Nobody ever wants to be in front. So with that, we'll open the floor up to any questions you'd be happy to tackle for you. Yes, sir.
50% of each city or all three combined?
Oh,
All
thank
three
you.
combined.
Yeah, 50% of the entire electric of what the new RFA would be. Thank you. Yes?
Is that increased fee on the water bill kind of in perpetuity, or is there some kind of time limit on that, or?
There is no time limit on it. It's just like it lives today. It's, you have that fee on there. Each city has had it for a differing length of time.
Yeah, so I'll say, there has to be a basis behind the fee. It can't just RFA, cities, we can't just pick the fee. So currently, Hoquiam, we're going out, we've contracted with a third party to do a fee study for us, and they'll tell us what the fee is. The RFA or the cities, you can do it yourselves. There are very strict guidelines as to what you can and cannot pass on in that rate to the citizens. So it's a very structured fee base, so it can't be whatever you want.
So, and on top of that, Aberdeen and Hoquiam specifically, because we have paramedics and we transport patients to the hospital or to other hospitals, we actually have two budgets. We have a fire budget and we have an EMS budget. And our firefighters are split between whether they are fire. It gets very complicated, but there's two budgets. In all three cities currently, that money for the monthly ambulance utility fee is strictly EMS, and that provides the paramedics that you see. So that is strictly for the paramedics.
It's a very restricted revenue.
It's
It
very
can only be
restricted.
used for EMS services, and that's it.
And that kind of leads into a question that has been brought up in one of the previous things is, why don't we, the cities, the county, whoever, bring in private ambulance? That is an option. Private ambulance is much more expensive. They want a hard upfront cost, and they're gonna provide minimal personnel and equipment for the price. In Aberdeen and Hoquiam and Cosmopolis, you're getting EMTs, or with the RFA, you get EMTs, paramedics that are firefighters, and EMTs, paramedics. So you're paying for both. You get both of those. So we cross-staff. You might jump in an ambulance this call and a fire engine this call. Whereas with a private ambulance, it would just be for the EMS side, and it would still need to be paid for.
Yeah, and it costs more. There was a cost analysis done several years ago, and it actually costs more.
A couple of local examples of just that right there that have come up in the last 20 or so years, give or take. There's been two that I know of. One of them is Grayland. Years ago, Grayland was before South Beach RFA became, again, their own separate fire district. They were part of an interlocal agreement that created what was South Beach Ambulance at the time. And there was a little disagreement, I guess you can say. Grayland was talking about pulling out of that interlocal agreement and doing their own EMS. And they contacted a private ambulance company to come in and can you handle our calls for us? And the base fee, just to have them say in a contract they're gonna be there, was $200,000, just to be there. With the caveat of, we're still gonna bill, and we're gonna balance bill, which means whatever your insurance doesn't cover, they're going to bill the patient. But there's no guarantee our ambulance is gonna be there, because we're gonna give you one, and then we're gonna work with the hospital to try to do interfacility transfers to transfer patients from this hospital up to Olympia or Tacoma, Seattle. So if we get that call, we're able to do that, that rig will be gone, because that's guaranteed funding. So you're paying a higher number for no guarantee that they're gonna be there. The other one was East County, I can't remember if it was District 5 at the time, or if it was City of Elma, but they looked at the same thing. And for them, it was gonna be $300,000 to $400,000, and same thing, we'll give you one rig, but if we get a transfer, we're taking that. So, why it sounds like it could be a great idea, when you get down to the nuts and bolts of how that really works, it's not as financially advantageous, and it's not as much bang for the buck as you get with the dual role fire and EMS.
Yeah, gentlemen have a question.
No, I'm good, I got it.
You got it, okay, we're that good? So,
She had her.
Right down, we'll get you next.
Oh, okay, I
No,
don't
you're
know
good.
if I can ask this in a coherent manner, but, what I understood, and I've missed a couple meetings, so the RFA would absorb or take the firefighting resources that we have here at the fire station currently, and it would be absorbed into the RFA, and would we have anything whatsoever that's firefighting equipment here, or would it be?
So, I think I know what you're asking, so let me try to answer it, and if I don't, we'll come back to it. Is, as part of the plan, there is an asset transfer. So all of the firefighting equipment, the trucks, the hose, all the fittings, everything, transfers to the RFA. And then the RFA will take all of that and disperse it throughout the RFA as they see fit. There'll still be fire trucks here. There'll still be an aid unit here. They still have all the equipment they need on it. So while the city itself would not own that equipment, the RFA would take ownership of it. But they would be, again, distributing it where it needs to be. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
So maybe I can add on to that also, is inside of the RFA plan that we've created is when Cosmopolis came into it, we created a COSI-specific plan to help recruit volunteers and to man the station. One of the things that we've heard at many of the meetings that we've had in COSI talked about manning. And currently, with the call volume that's in Cosmopolis as it is today, it's hard to justify moving one of the paid stations to Cosmopolis. There's 250 calls in Cosmopolis, the city of.
A year.
A year.
Yeah, last year was 250.
In the rest of South Aberdeen alone is 1,200, you said? 1,500?
South Aberdeen?
Yeah, just.
No, we're talking 2300
Okay, I'm way off.
just in South
So
Aberdeen.
2,200 calls. So it's hard to move those resources even further south away from the main body of calls. That goes to what I was saying, adjusting your resources where needed. With that plan and opening up the boundaries of the RFA and attempting to recruit more volunteers is, Nick and I ran the numbers. Once you hit a certain number, I believe it's 12, people will start assigning shifts, and people would be here in the beginning with that number, 12 hours every night. Would have 2 people here pulling a shift. So that's, this station will start to be manned with people for 12 hours every night. As we get more volunteers, we can expand those hours and get more staffing that are here.
What services would those two provide?
The same service that the RFA does. So if you had an incident in your house, and let's say you had a broken ankle, right? These two people here would be able to, because they'd be part of the RFA, Cosmopolis currently does not have a transport license. I understand at one point in history, Cosmopolis did have, I'm gonna look over here. At one point they did. I don't know when that was or when it stopped. But under the RFA, they would, what's that?
I can't remember it in the 30-plus years I've been here.
Yeah, I've only been told that it was there, so. So, these people, because it would fall under the RFA, would have that transport license, right? They could, if you had a broken ankle, two people can go get you and take you to the hospital. If you had a heart attack, there's much more things that need to be done to help you survive. So you would still be getting paramedics coming down to help these two people to administer those higher interventions, whether it be medicines or, God forbid, you had to get your heart shocked, right? So they would still perform a function within the system in Cosmopolis. Another option that we are looking at, and this is what Dave was referring to earlier, him and I grew up as students living in a fire station. And you get to live there for free. Sounds great, right? You get a shelter, you get a bathroom, you get a kitchen, but you have to go on 80 or 90% of the calls to that station, and you have to attend 80 to 90% of the training that is offered. In return, so in return for you staying here, you have to provide a function by going on calls for the department, for the station. In this case, where this station is in Causey, and this would be the primary responding station, you're still covered by 4 other stations and numerous other people, including paramedics. Does that, I probably went way too far, didn't I?
No. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, my question was about manning the station. So you just talked about, in time, you would have maybe 2 people here. But in, how long have we gone without a fire department, a volunteer fire department, since the new mayor took over? So we've gone, what, a year? We have 5 volunteers. You gotta reach the number of 12, so that's gonna take another 2-3 years to get that number.
It'll
To
take time.
get at least 2 people stationed here.
Yeah, so, but to just kind of add to that a little bit though is, with it being part of the RFA, you're not limited to Cosmopolis people.
No, well, they're not limited now with contracts that they have in play. Aberdeen
So-
helps them a lot now.
No, but as
So
far as
what's the
volunteer, just as volunteers.
The volunteers.
Just that
The
volunteer contingent,
people.
it'll be
Just the
opened up.
volunteers from Causey are here. You don't have volunteers in Aberdeen or Hoquiam.
No, and what we're saying is with the RFA,
You'll have them there.
no,
No.
what we're saying is, with the RFA, the boundaries of the RFA, volunteers can be from anywhere in there. And then they can volunteer for the RFA.
And I still don't understand, you
So-
guys said you both came from where you were volunteers, you worked on a house and did all that stuff. What stops Aberdeen and Hoquiam from doing that now? You say you can't do it, Causey's full volunteer, why can't you have them in your own separate houses now?
We could, we just don't
But
have
you
those.
choose not to.
We choose not to, and we don't have that program in place, and we are looking at it as Cosmopolis helping us provide that service.
No.
Yeah, and let me kind of put it this way, I'd like to use the whiteboard, so right now, again, I like the silos term, is Causey, Aberdeen, Hoquiam. Right now, for Nick, for his recruitment for volunteers, it's limited to here.
Yeah, I understand that.
So with the RFA, so this whole thing now becomes the RFA. The recruitment for the volunteers for the RFA, again, not for Causey, but for the RFA, because it's this whole new entity without boundaries, becomes all of this. So there's people over here, this guy over here wants to volunteer, perfect. We can sign him up for the RFA to be a volunteer. So
That would add to their numbers.
That would
because
add and be
that
able to
number 12
grow.
still exists for the whole
the
RFA.
whole thing, yes.
The number 12 was just what Nick and I did on math to,
Well, whatever the number is.
No, it was 12.
To reach that number.
the number was 12. The reason we came up with that number was, you still don't wanna burn out and overwork volunteers and make them work every
yeah.
night. And so 12 was the number for 12-hour shifts every week they'd have to provide 2 shifts of coming to work at the
Right.
station, or maybe 3,
One
depending.
every 9 days.
One every 9 days. And so 12 was the number that could provide for a month. It was just the math that we
Yeah,
looked at.
well, I understand working long shifts and doing, I did it
Right.
for 30 years. so-
And mind you, a lot of these people have jobs.
Yeah,
Matt, inasmuch as the authority would assume the assets of the respective departments, do I assume correctly that you would assume the liabilities also? And if that is the case, how do you meet payroll or the obligations inherent to those liabilities if you're dead broke January 1 of '24?
So with that, and Corey could get into this better, I will start to explain it, and when I falter, she will take over. In this, the agreement is that all 3 cities will continue to fund with what they have budgeted for at least the first 6 months, because the RFA doesn't exist today, right? And it doesn't exist till January 1st of '24, so it can't legally obtain any property, any taxes until January 1st. And so for that first half of the year, once it collects that first, what do you call it, the first section, first group of taxes, when it comes to, gets handed to the RFA in June, the cities have agreed to cover for that 6-ish months. Does that answer your
Okay,
question?
that answers that part of it. I have
Okay, then I'll let,
real quick. Between January 1 of '24 and 6 or 8 months hence, are the property owners, are we being taxed for the new authority? In
Sorry?
the first 6 to 8 months?
yes, that's
So
where that
we-
money comes in, that comes
So we
in
pay
June or
2 times,
No, so
really?
the property tax for the RFA gets deducted from the cities. So $1.50 per 1,000 gets deducted from the city's regular property tax and it gets shifted to the RFA.
So we will not then be double dipped as it
Correct.
were? Okay.
So I will say just, so when it comes to Aberdeen and Hoquiam, we have ambulance funds. And so those funds are restricted, that any cash or reserves that we have, that money's restricted. The city can't use those monies. So those monies will also be shifted over to the RFA. So there will be some cash on hand for the RFA.
That's not true. I've spent about 2 hours in the last couple of days on the phone with the assessor. Our taxes are going up. This RFA is a new entity in its own. The city's not gonna be paying you guys anything. They're still gonna have their own, tax levy rate at 1.96. The check for the RFA is gonna come from the treasurer's office. So, what was that?
No, I was acknowledging your statement.
So, on our taxes, I printed out mine. It breaks it down for us and tells us where each one is. Like, our city is getting, for my taxes, they get 1,257.46. And then, it kind of breaks them down. There's gonna be a new line for the RFA. And for me, that's gonna cost me $686.36 a year. That's new, that's on top, that's gonna make my taxes go up to $5,185.34 for the year. That's not including the $50 increase that's gonna happen on the utility tax.
It's a $22 increase on utility tax. Or
Actually, so on my bill, it's 18.
Yeah, so for
My
you.
city's picking up $986, cause we're paying you guys the
$27.96 a month per
yeah,
utility. for the city
$27.96 a
revenue.
month.
So it will be increased to 50, yes, but it's not a $50 increase.
Well, it will be, the charge will be $50.
Yes.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
I
which
know,
is 22
Yeah.
some odd cent.
Yeah.
Are we currently paying 18, so it's a $32?
Sorry, so it would be 22
Or,
from
I'm sorry,
Hoquiam,
32.
Our
Aberdeen.
city is graciously picking
So-
up $9.96 of that, which I feel like, I mean,
So I will say that the county assessor has a different, I spent almost an hour on the phone with them yesterday. They have a different opinion than MRSC. Our, both city attorneys, our fire district specialist attorney, our, our fire consultant that we did to do the feasibility study, and then all of us combined. So all three cities are in agreement that we are deducting $1.50 per 1,000 from our property taxes, our property tax levy rate that we are currently getting. All three cities, all three councils have approved that.
so that's gonna be in writing with the resolution, or?
That's up to each city, but that will be in
So-
resolution when it comes to the budget time. So when it comes to the budget time,
So
and
we
each city
basically,
is,
since they're not gonna add that, cause I also got a copy of the resolution and the ballot verbiage, and in nowhere it acknowledges that the city has to do that at all.
so.
It just says that we're getting charged the $1.50 for, to be initially funded by property tax, which this RFA is a brand new property tax. And those don't get paid by the city, like the city's not gonna pay that.
So where the county assessor is coming from is there's a local government cap, correct, on the property taxes. So like there's a cap as to every junior taxing district, or for local government, state governments, there's a government, like there's a governmental cap. Like we can't charge citizens whatever we want. Currently, I believe it's $3.50, and if the RFA is formed, is $3.62, but hold on. So, with the cap, what happens is, currently, I think Hoquiam's at like $2, and I don't know off the top of my head, something. So we're gonna deduct it by $1.50, and that's gonna be our regular property tax levy. So what the assessor is saying is that if the cities want to collect that gap to, if you add in the RFA, add in like Hoquiam and Aberdeen, we have the library, junior taxing district included in the local governments, as well as, the hospital district. So when you total all those up, if the limit is not maxed, then the cities can ask for an increase. But that increase should go out to the voters and get voter approval. So,
Say should.
no, so here, I'm not gonna, the assessor and myself and city attorney, our fire district attorney, we're all of us in MRSC, we're all in
So I
disagreement
have
with
a
the county
question then.
assessor,
So
I'm not
when
gonna
When
lie.
it comes to tax time, well, I mean, wouldn't we believe the people that are actually gonna be cutting the checks,
So-
who collect our taxes and disperse them, the treasurer disperses them?
But they disperse what the cities submit. So the submittees have to submit their property taxes. So the cities, we have to request what we want. So it has to go through an entire budget process. It has to go through public hearings. And every single city, all three cities have agreed to reduce their regular property tax by $1.50 per 1,000.
And I get that, but anybody can say anything, they're not putting it in writing, so basically we just have to trust that our cities are gonna do what they say they're gonna do and not charge us that extra $1.50.
We also have to trust that the county assessor is wrong or
Well-
right, and so I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a disagreement between the county assessor and some attorneys and
So how
myself.
is this money gonna get dispersed then? So I know you guys have all agreed, you say, but how is it gonna get dispersed?
What do you mean, how is it? So when you pay your property taxes, it
Yeah.
goes to the county treasurer allocates it out.
And so then have the cities told you guys that they're gonna put on theirs when they send in their budget, that they're only, like, city of Causey is only gonna charge us 0.46?
So each council has been notified, like, when we gave this presentation at the council, they have been notified that they are reducing their property tax by $1.50. So it's, they have it, by approving this plan, they approve that, and that is, they're giving the statement that they are doing that.
So are you saying that's binding without
No,
a
it's
vote?
not.
They could probably get around it.
They could probably get around it, but that is the understanding.
It's not, they could. I've spent 2 hours on the phone, over 2 hours on the phone in the last 2 days.
And I will
Two
say,
different people.
honestly, so this has been on the ballot 3 times. The county assessor just called me yesterday at 4:45 to let me know this. So I'm a little bit frustrated because.
They also told you that everyone was misinformed about this, that you're
But-
hanging on to one portion of this RCW, which there's a whole lot more to it. And then you get up and you still say the same thing that you've been saying this whole entire time, at every single meeting, because I've watched them.
But every single city council has said that they will, you're correct, it's not in writing.
Does everybody here trust what the city says? No. You gonna take their word for it? I mean, come on. Not really, not when it comes to money.
I think the cost is well worth it, so don't get me wrong, that's my starting point. This is an important service, I understand your arguments, I agree with them. But, you know, we pay huge water bills already. We have a lot of low-income residents, older residents on fixed income. If the 1.5 balances out, we're still looking at $350 a year more for every single resident of Cosmo.
At least.
For the ambulance.
No, it's around $240.
If it's $32 a month.
Is that,
Yeah, dude.
that's for our, sorry, that's for our.
We're like 280-ish.
Okay, ours is 184.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so,
let's call
sorry,
it
I'm cutting in.
$350 a year. I mean, you know, for someone who has enough income, okay, maybe that's fine. We agree it's worth it, great. But what about people who don't? You know, I mean, we live in an area that's non-urban and the water bills are higher than the bills in the whole region. So I just see that being the central problem. It's like everything is up. It's not that it's not worth it. It's how does everybody
So,
pay that?
if I could just, so, that is not lost on us. We understand it's an ask. I don't wanna pay more taxes, nobody does. I don't wanna pay more things, nobody does. But going back to where we're at today with fire and EMS, there needs to be an investment in the system to make it sustainable. And that's just what we're asking the voters for. And it's in the voters' lap do you want to make an investment in your emergency services for a sustainable product today and hopefully into the future, or not? And if you don't, then the voters have spoken. We go our separate ways. We continue to live in our own silos, and we'll have to figure out what can we do moving forward and what can't we do moving forward. There will be some hard choices, I know, for Aberdeen to be able, what is it we can and can't do. So, yep, it's not an endless pot of money. Even if the RFA comes, it's not an endless pot. You know, there are constraints there for what we're asking for. Yes, the initial vote sets it up. If we want to increase the tax levy, fire districts, which an RFA lives like a fire district can, but it's not just, they want to raise it today. It's, we would like to raise it, we ask. And it has to be approved by the voters. So the levy lid lifts. If we need to go out for other levies, it's all voter approved. The EMS availability fee, it's not just a, hey, let's jack it up. It's, we have to justify it by those rate studies that we do. So that's kind of where we're coming from is, you know, for what we do for you today, we're asking for this investment. And then we have a whole bunch of other.
You've had your hand up a ton, and I know it, I'm coming back to you.
I have two quick questions. One, currently, do the paid people in your departments have to live in the departments where they're paid? And will that be that way with the RFA?
Yeah.
And two, you're asking me to pay $50 a month, where now I'm paying 19 something a month. And if I use it to be transported, are you gonna charge me in addition to being paid? I pay you $50 a month, and if I ever have to use your service, you're gonna charge me in addition to that?
So to answer your first question, no. union contracts let them, they don't have to live within the boundaries.
And actually, there is an RCW, it is against the law for us to mandate that our employees live within a geographical boundary.
It must not be that way in every state, because
It's yeah, it may not be.
where I'm from in Oregon, they are required
Yeah,
to
I
live
just
where they're
know,
paid.
I just know RCW, yeah, I couldn't tell you what Oregon or another state, so that could be something that's available to the employers in another state, but I know in Washington, it is illegal to require a geographical
Would it
boundary.
be a good idea, right?
It used to be that way.
Yep, but I will tell you this, from a retention and recruitment, if I limited my hiring of paramedics to the city of Aberdeen, I'd have probably 3.
Yeah.
But
In
the
the entire
RFA, they can
department.
live in Causey, Hoquiam, or
Okay,
Aberdeen.
I'd have 6 on a good day. So, I mean, it's, while the theory is great, and I truly believe living in the community you serve is important. No, I don't live in Aberdeen. I live in Montesano, but the Grace Harbor community. I think that's important, but we can't hold people to that, so.
What about if I use your services and I'm transported, are you gonna charge me?
So that is, yes and no, honestly, it's up to the commissioners on how the budget looks. Hoquiam tried it didn't work for Hoquiam, so we charge. Aberdeen does not. So it's,
So
it's,
this is, yeah, one of those things that we cannot make this decision for the board.
yeah.
This is the new board is gonna have to make
So
that decision.
transport fees are listed because it is a possibility of being a revenue stream. So that's why it's listed, cause we're not gonna, it's listed as it could be a revenue stream. It is in Hoquiam. It's not for Aberdeen.
So I'm from Hoquiam, so I would, if I used it today, I would be charged.
Correct.
Cost of your charge.
I'm sorry, who was?
There's a couple
I've
of
got a
them, we're
lot more,
missing,
so
we're
if someone
missing
else wants to
some.
go, they can.
I'll come to you in a second, Kim, okay? She had it.
Bringing up your silo.
My silo,
Your
sorry.
silo, no, it's good. So, there's word on the street that if this fails, that there's been some terminology that Ozzy can just, that Aberdeen's done. Is this true?
So, okay. Here is this is what I said, is if this does fail, and I alluded to this already, as Aberdeen and Matt, I don't speak for Matt, I'm gonna have to take a hard look at what it is I do as a fire department. And am I gonna be able to sustain what I'm doing today? And that is, part of that is all the outlying districts we cover. Can we continue to do that? So there's going to have to be one of a handful of things happen. We go and we just cinch our belt up until we can't anymore and our system fails. We increase costs to the citizens, asking for more money. Our EMS utility rate right now is $27.96. I should be in the mid-30s, but I've been able to use reserves to buy that down this year. I can't continue to do that. Next year, I have to maintain so much in reserve. And I'm getting to the point, if I continue using reserves, I have too little left. And if we don't operate with enough reserves, Corey can talk more about this, but the state auditor doesn't like that. We get in trouble. And then if we have too much, we get in trouble. So there's this fine balance. So our rates are gonna have to go up. And those rates, going up for Aberdeen, translate to rates to those we contract with too. So our rates are gonna have to go up as well. So, and I hate going here, but it is a reality that if I have to raise my rates, the rates that you see in Cosmopolis will go up. Now, however the city covers that, that's up to them. And then that gets into, are we even able to have a contract to be able to do this service back and forth?
Yeah, but if we're paying $20,000 a month, correct?
It's like 21 some
$21,000,
odd. Yeah, right in that.
$81.84.
Right, give or take a cent or two.
Okay, and we've got 250 calls a year. That's kind of high.
Average is $992 per call to come over here. I kind of feel like Cosby's paying their portion to you guys.
You're paying the same as somebody in Aberdeen does for the same service.
Which I don't think.
Oh,
that's
by
a
the
bad
way,
idea.
your fire contract is per call, using state rates, which is, you're getting a heck of a deal. That is nothing. So, I mean, there's a balance there. There is no true fire contract for X number of dollars that we're going to cover you for fire. We have a couple of those contracts, and Junction City actually is Wishkos Fire District, believe it or not. It's a funky thing. It's a swath of land that goes between us and Central Park. We have a contract for that area, and it's in the neighborhood of $20-some thousand a year just for that swath of land for a fire contract. So, you know, you're not paying that side of things for an area that has maybe 3 calls a year. So,
Hold on one second, Kim.
So, using Cosby Fire's 2019 actual end-of-year budget numbers, you know, assuming that the only increases that we're gonna see is the $1.50 per thousand and the $50 on top of the water bill, and none of the others are pursued, none of the, you know, service contracts or any of these other funding mechanisms. Cosby would see about a little over 200% increase in what we're paying, you know, as of 2019, but we're not enjoying the benefits, I guess. We won't have a man station. You hope you have a man station, but you won't. Aberdeen and Hoquiam will gain 4 more people to have their man stations, where we're all gonna be paying that same amount, but the coverage appears to be different. Is that correct? Is that kind of a fair assessment of that?
You could say that, and I that's one way of looking at it. But you're still getting, the other day Cosmopolis had a structure fire. Yes, it was small. Yes, it got caught quick enough. But we talked about, and you're well aware of fire, correct? It grows quickly. The response for the fire that would happen last week was 2 engines from Aberdeen, an engine from Hoquiam, and a battalion chief. That is more than you've gotten. Is that correct? Did you see that kind of response before?
I mean, you know, they're all give and take.
Right.
We've had things here on scene where we've got our volunteer staff with 2 engines and, you know, and officers. So I'm not gonna cherry pick individual events.
I know, I'm just giving you an example of that just happened
Right,
a
and
week
you know,
ago.
today you guys are swamped and we probably wouldn't have seen anybody for a while. But like I said, it kinda just depends on the day and what's going on.
So I want to speak to that right now. You just made a comment, and I don't know if I'm misunderstanding you, John, but we were swamped, yeah. My crew's been running the wheels off the rigs today. And you wouldn't get anybody because we're busy. That is a misnomer. The call comes in for Cosby, we treat it just like any other call. Okay? I just want to, if that's,
No,
that's how I took it, so I just want to verify that, if that thought even is out there.
Well, I know that everything's
It's not second, fifth. We don't triage our calls because of where it's at or who it is, so.
But
I
what
just
the
wanna-
call is.
Yeah, no, the call is the call, and we apply the resources that we have available for that call in the moment, no matter what it is.
No, I'm not saying that you wanna not respond, but I'm
Okay,
saying.
I just want,
If you guys are
actually
tied up on a
that.
structure fire, a CPR, I mean, that's a lot of resources already utilized.
Right, and we've got a plan in place where we keep at least 2, if not 4 people out. They can do outside functions, ready to go to that next one. But to get back to your statement is, you're gonna get a larger structure fire response when you have 2 other paid departments with 4 stations, right? Like I said, you're gonna be getting multiple engines, ambulances, and a BC. Yes, if we're on multiple calls, we have to start spreading it out across the board. It's not Cosby that's gonna take the hit of it, it's across the board. Today in Hoquiam, we had a structure fire. Luckily, it wasn't very big, but the only one that arrived on scene from Aberdeen was the BC. Granted, he's driving that quick little pickup that can get across town a lot quicker than a 50,000-pound engine. But that's what we got from Aberdeen. Luckily from Hoquiam, it was actually our public works put it out, so let's just be honest. Our public works put it out with the garden hose. Good for them. But, so, your possible response to Cosby is increased with this, Again, you're getting 2, 3, 4-man engine companies. Aberdeen's got a ladder, we've got a ladder. You know, the mill fire that we had last year was a prime example of, what was it, 17, 18 people on scene with 4 engines, a couple ambulances, and 2 chiefs. I mean, that's what we brought over here. I didn't have to come over here. Well, I was home, so I drove down the hill, but I didn't have to do that. So, yes, I feel you're gonna get more out of it. Maybe you don't feel that way. Yes, Chief. Oh,
let him go first.
So, the overwhelming response is, that's what we all want. If it's our loved one that's down, if it's our house or a neighbor's house that's on fire, we want that overwhelming response. Many times, the resources that you send are unnecessary, and I understand why. But to gauge things on how many people, to have a bark fire at the mill, NFPA standards, it's a stretch to use those on that. We had summers, and will have summers, where those piles spontaneously combust.
It wasn't
They
in the
burn.
pile.
there wasn't a bark
It
fire
was
in the pile.
it was contained within, so there's an
So
explosion hazard.
for decades, that's been maintained and just fine with a lot less of a response effort. And so, we talked about call volume. The RFA does nothing to reduce call volume. We talked about our struggles at our 911 dispatch center.
Steve, you brought this up a
I'm
couple
gonna
times,
speak
and
to
I
this
just want to
right
clarify
now.
something. The RFA has nothing to do with the struggles at the 911 center.
It's a
And if
funding
you're not
issue.
aware of them, the 911 center is having severe staffing issues. I cannot control that in the city of Hoquiam. Dave cannot control that in the city of Aberdeen. Nick cannot control that in the city of Cosmopolis.
It's a
I will
funding
admit
issue that
that
has to be addressed by
Dave
the
and I are on a
taxpayers.
committee that are trying to help come up with a solution, but that's not us.
And Steve, it needs to be addressed, the 911 issue needs to be addressed by a funding solution. It's not funding, they got plenty of money, they just don't have bodies.
So a lot of us have
And
argued the
it's-
same with the
it's
fire service.
It is a common theme amongst 911 centers across the state, the staffing issues.
There's one
Now, it is
911
magnified.
center, there is one 911 center in this state right now that is fully staffed and 100% operational. Walla Walla. Nobody knows why Walla Walla is the winner.
It's the wine.
It must be the wine. Nobody can justify or guarantee or spread the knowledge across the state. But there is no 911 center in the state besides Walla Walla that is fully staffed and functioning to 100% of its ability. That also, the RFA is not responsible for the hospital issues, and I'm sure everybody's well aware of the issues going on at the hospital. We can't control that. We do our best to get patients out of Grays Harbor Community or Harbor Regional, or Summit Pacific as much as we possibly can. If you look in the back row, there's a handful of firefighters from Aberdeen and Hoquiam right now. They run their butts off at work, and then they try to come in off duty to send patients out of town. I'm sure you all heard, there's a helicopter business coming to Hoquiam. Why do you think that is?
Money to be made.
Thank you.
Exactly.
It's a private business, they're a nonprofit, but they are a private business. They're in it to make money. They obviously saw what's going on here and went, oh, cha-ching, let's move a helicopter down here. But again, this is, the Aberdeen and Hoquiam Fire Departments are doing what they can to help the county system. We can't fix the county system. We can't fix 911. We can't fix the hospital. We can't fix Grays Harbor EMS. We can support it. We can do the best we can to provide the best service we can for it, but we cannot fix it. And that's not our concern.
So speaking just to Cosmopolis, we're gonna take, and Corey and I argue about the numbers, we're gonna take somewhere between 750,000, and if you use, we're gonna be doing this with $2,024. That's the tax assessment you're gonna be paying on, is $2,024. So we know that's gonna go up. We're already going up. You know, since 2016, it's gone up an average of 17% across the board every year. So we know it's gonna go up. So using 2024 numbers, we're gonna take somewhere between 750,000 and 900,000 out of the tax base in Cosmopolis. And we're gonna move that over and we're gonna put it into the RFA, okay? That's a ton. What do we do to backfill that money in Cosmopolis for our needs? We have police officers and streets and everything else we still have to fund and do. What do we do to backfill that money? And then, on the other side of it is, how do we guarantee the services? And in a perfect world, Causey would have a robust volunteer fire department. We would have some more staffing in Aberdeen and Hoquiam. The Aberdeen and Hoquiam group, they are running wild. I feel every day for these people out there. They're doing a great job. There's too many calls. We have to nix this call volume. And why do we have it? We have an epidemic of drug and problems. We have unhoused. This does nothing to that. It doesn't do anything to address those issues.
So how can the
How
RFA
do we
handle
address
that,
those
though?
issues?
That's my question to you, Steve. How can the RFA fix homelessness?
The RFA can, but the
Then
funding
why are
should
you
be
talking about it?
dropped back down. It should be a little more reasonable funding efforts, so we still have a little bit of tax money to address these other problems. So I think you're robust in your plan. I think you're asking for way too much in the RFA. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I think that staffing models could change. We need more firefighters. We need more EMTs and paramedics. We need that. Your staff, when we get the quality of firefighters who we get service from, they can't keep maintaining that rate. They can't. But throwing money at a problem isn't gonna fix it.
So
We have to look at our staffing models.
And this helps address staffing.
So we're increasing staffing by 4. How
By
do you
4,
expect
3 on the
us to-
street,
how do
1
you
in the
ex-
office. That's not enough.
Okay, so then if you state that we need to increase staffing, how do you recommend we pay for that?
I recommend, and I have for decades, that you start young and you start with a robust volunteer fire department. You
It
do
takes money
functions
to
to
increase
get
staffing.
people
Where's
in.
it coming from?
You know what? For decades, we ran a Cosmopolis Fire Department very successfully for far less than $200,000 a year. We're gonna now spend an average of $800,000.
So you just contradicted yourself because you said to build a department, you would start at a young age and build a volunteer fire department.
would.
That's exactly what this model is doing. It's bringing in
That's what
Causey
we're planning, our
to
goal is.
building in
That's
a
what our plan
robust
is talked
volunteer
about.
department. So I'm
We need
a
it.
little confused.
We need it today.
Okay, well,
We
by
don't need it in
opening up a
2024.
larger
We're gonna be in
environment to
in
be able to
a world
build
of
a
hurt in
pool from?
2024. So, I mean, we all gotta chip in here a little bit.
Okay.
But the fees, so taxes are one thing, and there are limits and there are limits. Fees are not. So the ambulance fee is $50 today, it could be $75 next week. And that does not
That is
have to go to
completely
a vote
But
of
we
people.
explained that to you, that he can't, it's just like the city council, the commit, we can't just
There has to be a basis.
arbitrarily decide, tomorrow we want it to be 100, the
There is
next
a
day.
basis. You need more medics on the street, you raise the rate, you fund those people. But you
So,
don't,
but
you can't
you
get
just
them.
said that this funding mechanism is too much. So you're saying that we do need more people and we need more money, but how do we get that more money if we're not increasing fees and we're not increasing?
Well, here's an example. How long have you provided service for the Port of Grace Harbor? Hoquiam and Aberdeen do not charge the Port of Grace Harbor any fees
That's,
for their service.
that
So they
is
come to the
incorrect.
taxpayers instead of the producers. You got APW just signed a huge deal. What do they pay for that service?
That is actually incorrect. They pay, on their water sewer storm bill, they do pay the ambulance availability fee. You're correct that they don't pay property taxes because it is a government agency and governments do not pay property taxes.
But wait a minute, Seattle has their own fire department, the Port of Tacoma contracts with Tacoma Fire, Olympia contracts with Olympia Fire. So you do get money out of those businesses and those things in the port. So instead
those
of
are
looking at the whole
contracts with
plan,
the port itself, not with the actual businesses there. So that's an interlocal agreement or a contract between
It is.
two governmental agencies.
in which the port charges those businesses that are there for that service, and that's the way it gets paid. So you're correct.
Okay, so we got a bunch more questions, can I go to you? Yes.
So he had said that we start with a robust volunteer department, and we have one right now, correct? We have, how many?
We're at 5 volunteers,
We have
yeah,
5.
we're working on it.
Okay, so my question, I guess, would be, is if the goal is to use those volunteers, why aren't we doing that? How
He
many-
is openly recruiting right now, so if anybody in this room wants to volunteer.
Oh, I'm aware of that, and I'm aware that you guys are recruiting outside of Cosmopolis as well, but with your 5 and the last, I don't know, 3 weeks, how many calls have you guys responded to? Are you using your resources?
We're trying to, but we all work day jobs.
Oh, I'm aware of that, but
There's-
the calls that happen at night too, part of your job as a volunteer is to do that. Why volunteer if you're not responding?
We have 2 people who are qualified to the point of volunteering, or of responding on their own.
I was gonna say, I can kind of speak to this. I am currently volunteering for the fire department. I have no experience, so this is new. I'm learning on the job. I can't do much. I'm not an EMT. I'm not even, you don't want me on the scene of a fire just yet. Okay? One guy's going through EMT school right now. He can't even come to drills on Monday nights because that's when EMT is going on. So really we got 4. Phil is actually kind of, what is he, like kind of South Aberdeen? He can't even really respond to calls in time. Aberdeen's gonna beat us there every time. Aberdeen kind of beats us there. If not, we can tie them maybe to a call right now because Nick and Mark, Nick the chief, Mark deputy chief, lives up the hill. They have to drive all the way down the hill. If I'm here, I live 3 blocks away. I can make it here before anybody else does. I can make it here in 3 minutes. I could possibly make it to a call before Aberdeen does, but I cannot because I'm not trained. I cannot go without Mark. I cannot go without Nick. So that really drops response time. By the time, I don't know, it's really hard. We're trying to get the response going, but the truth is we need volunteers who are close to the fire department. We need volunteers who know how to drive their rigs. Right now I'm currently in the process of putting in the hours to drive the fire engine, right? You gotta do that training, you gotta go, anyway, all that to say, we need volunteer firefighters who live 3 blocks from here so that we can, I'm probably not supposed to say this, but so that we could have made it to that CPR call this morning. There was 7 minutes between when that call was made and who knows how long that gentleman was down. We need volunteer firefighters close to here so we can respond quickly. We don't have that right now. We have 5, it's not robust enough.
It's not, but I'm aware that you guys have turned down several applications that are in Cosmopolis. So you're asking for recruitment, but you're turning down people who are volunteering who do have experience.
The city turned down 1 application. That is accurate.
I'd like to speak on response from, you don't have to respond to the station as a volunteer. You can have equipment, which we all used to carry, and we could respond from our homes. So many times, up in the neighborhood you're talking about today, there's 3 volunteers that service that area for decades.
Also, and this, we're answering questions, I appreciate your input, but this is actually directed to the staff that is currently at the City of Hoquiam, City of Aberdeen, and City of Cosmo. So, another question?
Another question. Kim, did you have a question?
Don't be fooled.
Kathy, do you have a question?
Yeah, this is back to the utility. $50 was like what I understood from meetings before, you said when the commissioners get put in place, they can decide to, it won't go down, but it could go up. Right, because that's what I was told at the meetings. So commissioners, whoever they are, decide how much money is needed, and that fee could go up. How much is there a maximum?
So there has to be a basis for the fee. So, yes, it could go up, but Aberdeen, when was the last time you guys increased your fee?
About 3 years?
But even before
But
that.
we don't increase it every year
And
because we've
Hoquiam,
been able to buy it down, but yeah.
in Hoquiam, we increased ours, I wanna say 5 years ago, and then, or 3 years ago, and before that, it had been the same for years and years and years.
Because
So-
water bills are outside right now.
Yes, well, that's, their contract rate also increased, so that's, so with that, so there has to be, so if there's gonna be increases, there needs to be a basis as to why the increase is happening. So there has to be some, yes.
Say they
So-
say there's why. Is there a cap at how high that can go?
No, there's not a cap.
So $50 is like, it's not gonna go down, but it could go up.
It could go down.
It could go down, but yes,
You're 100% correct.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
But it, yeah.
yeah. Okay, how long of a time does it take to train like a volunteer firefighter?
Okay, so I'll put my training officer hat on because I was a training officer way too long. So to train a volunteer firefighter, it is not, the state doesn't treat a volunteer any different than a paid career firefighter. The standards are the same. And in fact, I like to say that fire doesn't care if you're a volunteer or if you're a paid person. So the training, EMT training that we're talking about, that is 4 months. They offer that class once a year locally. And usually most departments can get their people in. If there was a huge influx of volunteers here, I'm sure that Larissa would love to teach an EMT class for Cosmopolis Fire.
Sure would.
Yeah.
I'd be a lay instructor.
Okay, there you go. I'm retired again. Yeah. I used to teach classes. So that's that. So that's a 4 month or so window for the class. Okay, that's just the EMT side. Now there's the fire side. Now the fire side, there's different layers here. Basic Firefighter 1, that is the gold standard for firefighter training. That's a class can take 5 to 6 months if done locally. There are local regional firefighter academies that are put on. South Beach does quite a few of them. East Grace Harbor, Elma area, they do one often as well. You should see at least one of those a year. So you can get that, but you can't do those at the same time. So to get a firefighter EMT to be really functional, you're looking at probably about a year process if everything lines up, for those classes. Now that's just the base firefighter training. That doesn't teach you all the ins and outs of running the fire truck. That's a specialized skill in and of itself. It's a lot of pulling levers, doing math in your head at 2 o'clock in the morning to make sure you have the right pressure on that hose line for that crew inside the building. And I would actually but I would actually, in my opinion, say that the engineer is probably one of the most important people on that fire scene because the lives of those firefighters in the house is on the guy running the truck and being able to make sure that water's going where it's supposed to go. Learning that can take some time. That's all gonna be based on the individual and their knack to be able to catch that. There's not really an academy to go to. That's a lot of in-house training to do. So there's that. You have to have officers. You have to have oversight over them. It's not just everybody just go and do and hope it all comes together. You have to have people to orchestrate all the organized chaos on scene of a structure fire. That's extra training too. Learning how to manage an incident safely and effectively, using sound techniques for firefighting, using good benefit risk analysis as an incident commander to make sure that you're not going to kill your firefighter. And when I was a battalion chief doing that, that's something that weighs heavily on me, and still today as a fire chief, of making sure we're not putting people into a place that they're potentially going to get. So that again, there's classes you can take for that, but those are sporadic and it takes time to get there to understand it. So it depends on what level you're looking at, but at a minimum, really to get a firefighter EMT race ready to be a independent contractor, if you will, to operate, you're looking at probably a year minimum.
In that, I think it's important to distinguish the difference between career and volunteer when it comes to that. The training requirements are the same, but when you work a full-time job, trying to do all those classes on top usually don't happen sequentially like that.
When the fire department volunteer, my husband, and in here, and they trained the newcomers. And it took them so many months, and they were even either put in or it didn't make the muster.
Right.
That's how it was.
Yeah.
And then it went, you didn't have to do it until the beginning. But then you had to start having first responder,
Yes, that's, yeah,
whatever
that's
it is,
right.
which I think is, you have to be, you don't have to be an EMT, but you have to have first responder.
Your bare minimum for medical
Yes.
training is first.
So all that takes time. It says when all the volunteers were doing it, the experience, the knowledge that was in here, they trained each other. They didn't go anywhere else. They did it here. And there's a lot of these guys out there that.
The turnover was,
That's
Yeah,
right.
you're right, it wasn't. And,
Learn from the older guys.
and you do not have to make your firefighter a firefighter one.
Yep.
Before they can go legally into a burning building, they have to do what's called live fire training. They have to go into a burning building,
They go to the
right?
North Bend.
Right. But it puts a huge liability on me as the chief, and I'm gonna use this gentleman, I don't know your name. Sam. Sam is my guy. It puts a huge liability on me that if I don't get him trained to firefighter one, or send him into that practice fire, and I send him into a fire, and he gets hurt, or dies, guess who that comes on? That comes on me. So I'm gonna take the time and the effort to make sure he is trained properly, so that he knows what to look for in that fire, or how to drive a rig appropriately, so that it doesn't come back on me. Because I don't want that on my shoulders, for one, and two, I could bankrupt the RFA, or the city of Hoquiam, or Cosmopolis, whoever you wanna use, because I chose as a chief, you know what? Here, you've driven a car before, jump in that 50,000-pound rig, let's go. I can't do that, honestly, right? So we opt to go for the higher standard of training to make sure that he is safe and does things appropriately. And I'm doing a CYA, right? I'm covering my butt on that one.
And one more thing to add on the back end of this is standards of training when it comes to insurance rating board. Is the Washington State Survey and Rating Board, which is the state agency that scores fire departments and gives it a rating, and insurance companies base homeowners insurance rates based on, that's one of the things they look at, is the rating of your fire department. When it comes to training, just in of itself, they look at what your people are trained at, what level. Is it firefighter 1, or is it below? Is it firefighter level 2? And they look at those different levels, and then they look at the training you're doing in-house as well. And what the nice thing is, the higher the certification that that person has as a firefighter, the less training that the rating bureau says you have to have. So on average, for a firefighter 2, which is one step up, from firefighter 1, obviously, firefighters are required to have 10 hours of training per month. That's what the rating bureau wants, and if you don't get that, then they start taking points away from you within the big blender of score. I mean, our heads could explode if we wanted to talk about how they come up with those numbers, but that is an example of something they look at that, based on your training, if they're higher trained, you get a little better score. And if they maintain their training at a certain level, you get a little bit better score. But if you fall,
Yeah, sorry. I was kind of curious, in looking at the various funding mechanisms, one that was in there, which I was just kind of curious what that means, which is fire impact and mitigation fees. It sounds like the ones that we mostly focus on are the, the $1.50 per thousand in the water bill. And then there's 5 other different ones in there that I wasn't really sure what that meant or what that is.
So that can be, typically what that is something comes in, I'm trying to think of an industry that it comes in. Another mill gets built there, right? That mill is a target hazard. It creates hazards in itself, right? It's got chemicals or fire or whatever that mill is producing has a risk to it that is different than what it is today. And the fire departments and or cities have the ability to say, you know what? You are creating, no, I'm gonna back up, I'm sorry. When the methanol storage facility came in, to Hoquiam. It used to be Westway, now it's Catata or something like that. When they came in, that was a new risk for the Hoquiam Fire Department. So they provided us with a truck that has 1,250 gallons of foam and a giant deck gun on it. That was a mitigation fee applied to that business because they created a new risk.
So it's kind of like a one-time thing if you got a
It's-
new.
It's typically a
liability
one-time
account.
thing,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
That explains it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned earlier now, you guys, if this gets voted down, you guys can automatically take our $21,000 a month when the contract's up. You can move that up to $30,000 a month?
So what, we can't automatically do it.
No, you have to do the contracts.
Yeah, so what, in theory, what would happen is if myself as Aberdeen needed to increase rates to be able to sustain what we're doing, I would then in turn go to the city of Cosmopolis and these are my rates, and we'd negotiate a contract. So it's not an automatic, there's got to be an agreement. I just can't forcibly say, because that's not how our contract's
You know
written.
yours is gonna go up.
Yeah, and I don't know what that looks like. I mean, I can't look into the future to see what it really would or would not be. But if they were to go up, or if they were to go down, again, we don't anticipate things, it would have to be a contract, so it's not this kind of, again, I heard the term, I think he used the term blank check earlier. Is it not, I can't just go to the city of Cosmopolis and say, oh, it's this today. Next month, oh, now it's this. You know, we would come up with a contract, this is how much it is, and move forward from there.
For, just as a side note, for Hoquiam, we have outlying districts that we have contracts with as well. And we're currently doing a study for our ambulance availability fee as well as our outlying districts, to renegotiate those contracts. So that way that we have a basis behind what we're charging.
I don't know which one of you two have hand. Go ahead.
So, you got the commissioners, you say 3 commissioners at large. So does the mechanism, all the taxes and all that stuff pay their fee? Because that'll be a paid position, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
It's
So they pay with benefits?
No, it's just salary, so it's $114 per day, and it's capped at $9,900.
Per day that they function on behalf
Function on behalf
yes,
of the
per
of the
day
RFA.
And
And they're,
Then they get per diems and stuff like that, just like any other commissioner.
No, it's flat out, it's just that flat dollar amount for the day, and then it's capped at $9,960 per year.
Okay, and then so that board also governs all the money that's gonna be spent throughout the RFA. So the cities themselves can't say, oh, we're gonna take away your insurance because the city needs money here.
Correct.
So the cities, no matter who's running them, can't have their little paws in there and stop paying your benefits
Correct.
or his benefits. It's all gonna be governed by the RFA commission.
100%, and that was one of the original goals of this is, right now, all 3 cities, the fire department is just one of the many departments. Police department, public
Right.
works, streets, blah, blah, blah. And the fire departments have to, lack of a better term, compete
Sure.
with all the other, out of this one pie of money, we have to compete for that.
Yeah.
This pulls us out, and the money that comes in is just for the RFA. Now, are we gonna make it rich? No, I am not gonna get rich doing this by any means.
No, your salary's set. So.
But this is, the money's gonna be, the commissioner's focus will be fire and EMS service. All 3 cities, I've worked with the council people, there's all 3 cities represented here. And I feel as if all of them do what's best for the community, looking at the, as they should, as a large, for the city as a whole, right? Police, fire, public works, admin, legal, blah, 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 right?
A lot of hats.
And they do, but they have a lot of hats, and they have to make tough choices sometimes about who gets what and when. This pulls that aside, and those 3 commissioners are strictly worried about fire and EMS for all 3 cities.
And I will say that their salary, what they'll get per day, is set by RCW. They cannot increase it, it's set by RCW. It's actually like a set dollar amount.
And if any of you watched the video from Aberdeen last week or were there was a person in the crowd that made a comment that it was $96,000 a year, I believe is what they said. It's $9,900 a year. not 96,000. This is not a career for commissioners. This is not a job. It is times 3. So let's just round up and say $10,000 a year for them to go to meetings and operate the regional fire authority. It's not 96,000 a year. This is not a job. This is a side gig.
If it is, I'm running for commissioner.
You have a question?
With my day job.
Yeah.
So,
Is this
hold on.
RFA going to better our insurance rates?
So right now, the city of Cosmopolis is a 6, I
Yeah,
believe.
we're at a 6, which is the best rating that we can get with an all-volunteer department. Once we become a combination department, that's considered a change of staffing, so the state rating bureau will have to come and reevaluate everything. But what it does is, it changes from, right now, what the last time they rated in 2020, this station is the responding station to your house if you live in Cosmopolis. Now you can say you have 4 responding stations because on the fire, or structure fire, you're gonna have this station's 5, South Aberdeen, headquarters Aberdeen, and East Hoquiam on that first alarm package. I don't see it reducing your insurance, but I can't speak for the state on how they evaluate all of that.
So Hoquiam and Aberdeen are on the verge of tripping in, on the verge of a 4. We're just over a 4. So Hoquiam's a 4.39. So if I can improve by adding, let's say, 10, 12 volunteers and a 5th station, I have the ability to maybe lower it. I can't make that, I'm not an evaluator. I can't.
Yeah.
How often are we evaluating?
5 years. 5 years. Aberdeen and Hoquiam just got, maybe you guys too, 2 years ago.
A couple years ago.
In 21.
So you got 3 years to get this, if this wasn't to go through, you got 3 years to get this up and go. So we don't lose our rating.
Way to put no pressure on them. Good job.
Being serious.
You're right,
But
I'm
they have the
sorry.
right, the state has the right to come in and evaluate. So if they hear of a staffing change, which did occur last year, they have the right to come in and reevaluate what occurred.
So if we go from a 6 to a 5 or a 6 to a 4, what will that do to insurance rates?
I do not know.
Your insurance rates
and-
most likely, what I was told is when your insurance
Right.
rate comes up again, your insurance rate can increase
Increase?
if
So
it gets,
I've heard that it will go down significantly, but
The rating or
if we
the,
go from a 6 to a 4,
Yeah.
4.2.
A 6 to a 4 is
it's a huge.
that's a good jump. I think you would, I'm not an insurance agent,
Yeah, it should come down, not go up.
but I would think a 6 to a 4 would realize some savings on that, but I wanted just to come back really quick to the governance and the commissioners. That something that was missed is each city will also have a voice on the board of the RFA. So in addition to the 3 at-large commissioners voted on by the citizens, each city will appoint from their electeds, so mayor and level council, a representative to sit on the RFA board as a non-voting advisory member. So they have a voice there within those discussions that the RFA is going to be having about how they operate in general. They'll have that there. So it's not going to be that the cities are totally disconnected from this new RFA.
But it's a non-voting member.
But it just, like I said, it's a non-voting advisory member. And that does a couple of things. It brings concerns that the cities have to the RFA commission. It also allows those electeds to take information back to their respective cities on what the RFA is doing and all that, good political stuff back and forth. So.
Is the advisory person on the council or the citizens?
It's voted, or it's appointed from the elected officials of the city.
So it'd be a
So
council member
it'll be a council member or the mayor of the city.
So, just so I understand, if the RFA is voted down, it doesn't mean that as a citizen of Cosmopolis, all my fees and all the costs are going to be what they look like today. There's no guarantee. What we pay today, Aberdeen, or what we pay for EMS fees will remain the same, correct?
Correct, yeah, I used this example with somebody the other day. I can't tell you what a gallon of fuel is next year. you know, it's the same type of thing. I can't look into the future to know exactly what that fee structure is.
So voting no doesn't guarantee it looks the way it looks today.
Correct. Yeah.
And kind of to go off of that is, again, we understand what happened in Cosmo. Does anybody here agree with it? No. Lack of a better term, and pardon my French, went sideways, didn't it? I live in Cosy, half of you know that. I don't appreciate not having a fire department. Nick is doing all he can do to bring that back up. And I'm trying to support him as much as I can. Yes, this failed in Aberdeen Hoquiam twice. We used a funding mechanism that literally nobody liked. And
People
for-
couldn't calculate it themselves, so it was very uncomfortable.
it was new to the area, it was a math equation that I can't even write.
Had a square root in it.
It had a square root and a, yeah. And we heard that, and we took that away. And so as we started talking, and the situation that happened in Cosmopolis, I'm friends with Nick outside of work. Hey, can we do something together? So that's where Cosmopolis came in. The unfortunate situation that happened with the Cosmopolis Fire Department is not Aberdeen or Hoquiam's fault, but we're trying to bring a solution. And unfortunately, as everybody knows, and we've heard it, costs are rising. They rise for us. Diesel goes up. Fire engines are now almost $1 million. Ambulances are over $200,000. $265. For an ambulance, a box that drives down the road, $265,000. We are trying to spread this out amongst all 3 cities and provide the best service that we can. That is giving paramedics for EMS calls across the board. Cosmopolis has had, and there's some people in here that will correct me, but as far as I know, has only had 1 or 2 paramedics on their staff in the last 20 years. Am I wrong?
Paramedics?
Paramedics.
Kazi staff?
Kazi,
Maybe, you may have had one.
One, thank you. I was going, I estimated high. I know the one. He hasn't lived here for 15 years.
But they can't treat them any different whether they're paramedic or first responder.
No, but my point was, is Aberdeen has been providing Cosmopolis with paramedics forever. And they've been transporting forever. We're trying to continue that and make a sustainable service across the board. Does everybody in Cosmopolis care what happens in Hoquiam? I really doubt it. I really, thank you. Someone's honest.
We don't even care what happens in Aberdeen.
Thank you. Well, neither do I, but I have to drive through it.
Yeah.
So that's where this plan came up, is we're trying to create a plan that helps all 3 cities. That's hence the name Central Grays Harbor, right? We're the middle of Grays Harbor. We're trying to make this plan, we're trying to help the city of Cosmopolis, we're trying to help all of you, or a lot of you, I don't know where everybody lives, with this plan. Does it cost money? It does. It costs us money to do our job. Again, everything is going up, and we're trying to do our best. We are, again, not trying to gouge anybody, we're not trying to get rich, and I understand that I'm gonna just wing a guess here, 50% of you, it doesn't matter what I say, I'm not gonna convince you to think the way I do.
Can I just speak on it?
Yes.
I am not anti-firefighter, I'm not anti-funding firefighters. I just don't think that as a small city that takes, last year we had 255 calls, that the RFA really makes sense. I've never in my life voted against firefighter funding. I don't even support, I haven't paid attention to this RFA for this whole entire time until like 2 weeks ago. Because I'm always a yes, to fund firefighting. It's essential, we need it, I just think for our little city, I think instead of signing up for, as far as we can see into the future, for extra taxes that, we aren't gonna use, not as much as Aberdeen and Hoquiam are. I just think that,
And I respect.
a higher contract makes more sense for us.
And I respect your thought on that. Again, like I said, I don't think I'm gonna convince some of you. And I get that. I'm trying to tell you what I can provide you. As the fire chief of Hoquiam, I am trying to provide you with these services. I know I'm not gonna sell everybody on it. I'm not a salesman. I guarantee you that.
How much is it, Chief Golding, for the
utility fee per month for the city of Causey right now, what residents are paying to the city of Aberdeen? What is it costing?
Ballpark figure.
Ballpark figure.
$27.96. Do the math, get the finance go.
I have 754 utility accounts.
Which is roughly $21,763.29-ish.
Okay,
So right in there.
If this does fail, you're still gonna have the 27 coming from the city if there's still currently a contract, say, next year.
If there is a contract, yeah.
What is the difference between what they currently pay and what they would pay with the $1.50? Give or take, say monthly. If it's $50 a month for everybody to have the same service they have right now, what is it gonna be extra if it passes? Give or
The city
take.
of Cosmopolis, I did mine, $384 a year.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I
because
did
what I'm
mine.
trying to do is put this in perspective, that if it fails, you're still gonna pay X amount per month, potentially.
There's that potential.
I'm just trying to put it on a perspective of, if it costs you $17 more a month, is that worth voting yes for the RFA?
Yeah.
If it's not, it's not.
Again, this goes into the, my crystal ball looking into the future comment is, I don't know what that's gonna look like in 2024 if we are separate. Or 2025. I don't know what those numbers truly look like. All I can tell you is I know that I can't use reserves to continue to keep my rate down. And next year I am due to do my ambulance rate study as a city of Aberdeen. And whatever that comes back as, we'll have to visit what all of this looks like at that time as Aberdeen and all of our surroundings. So, yes.
Commissioners.
Yes.
This happens, we have these commissioners, they dictate to you how you will run your fire department.
In a sense, they will. Yeah, they would be the chief's boss. And of course, they usually give the chief, the latitude to manage as they see fit, but they do give them, lanes to travel in. So, but yeah, the three new commissioners would in fact be the boss of the fire chief, yes.
Then there's revenue sources.
Yes.
Revenue sources is transport.
Yes.
Those transports that are done between the hospital and up the hill on Bossage Boulevard.
Yeah, whatever they might be.
Whatever they
Yeah.
might be.
Yes.
Those are revenue, so commissioners could say, we want to grab more of those as we can.
As we can, yes. And I'll tell you, I love doing those. Playing a private ambulance game. Because, those are bills. I hate to say it, but, I have to look at my finances and that's revenue coming in if I can do those. So,
As a
but it's
citizen,
able to do them.
as a citizen and as a man that was a union guy for years, we got away from the idea that overtime was a penalty and overtime became a bonus. Do we depend on those transports to earn our paycheck?
No.
Okay.
We do not.
Okay.
When I do my budget for Aberdeen, I do not really count on transports. And I can't because I have trouble filling them with my off-duty crews. As Matt alluded to, my guys will run their you-know-what's off and be up all night. And the last thing they want to do is come back in and drive to Olympia or Tacoma or Seattle. And I don't want them to. They need that downtime, they need that rest. So, but if we can do them and there are people that are willing, I'm more than willing to, let's do that. And that does become a revenue stream.
Thank you.
It's not huge, but it is something. Yeah.
So, one more point then on the commissioner, so that takes your direct report as a chief away from reporting to an elected city official, and your direct report would be to the commissioner?
Yeah, it's just like right now, it's a little funky, we got a new city administrator, but I report kind of two bosses, the city administrator and the mayor right now, and we're kind of fleshing how that really works. But before we had a city administrator, it was like my boss was the mayor.
And that will go away with ours.
Right, because we would not be employees of the cities of, we become employees of the RFA. So we are, again, disconnected. City doesn't dictate how fire services are delivered in. it's that new elected board.
Yeah, they elect
The
new
people that
chiefs.
elect them comes from.
Yes,
They're elected.
yeah, right, yeah. There's that in around, yeah.
Yeah.
I was getting confused because I saw it says in the plan that they vote. The man who was the chief of the volunteer fire department in Bremen, Mike Reichenhausen.
Oh, yes, I recall that.
I spent an hour on the phone with him picking his brain. And I said, what made you decide as the chief of the volunteer fire department, what made you decide to go to the RD?
The okay, yes, yeah.
And he said, I could see that down the road, I wasn't getting enough volunteers. Pretty soon, people were moving out. Pretty soon, people's kids were in sports, and they couldn't make it as often. Pretty soon, people were getting old and quitting. I just couldn't get the volunteers. And so he said, you know, it was a hard struggle, and they fought it for a long time.
Yes, they did, yeah.
And I don't know if they had did they have several elections too?
I don't recall,
I know I
think
just
we had
was
the
reading
one, if I
more.
remember correctly. I could text my brother-in-law, but he's probably watching golf tournament right now, I don't want to interrupt him.
But I thought,
But he was part of that working out there, so.
and he said also, I picked his brain on the commissioners, and he said, those are the people you elect, and you be careful that you get people that are watching the spending.
Oh, right, yeah, that's part of those elected officials' job is, you know, watching the purse strings.
And I asked him if he's happy that he made that decision, or they made that decision. And he said it was working well and that he was pleased with it.
Yeah.
And I kept asking him questions, and I came tonight to hear more before I decide. I'm gonna go over my notes at home too. But it was really helpful to talk to him, because he's been on both sides of it.
And for a long time too. I've been in Aberdeen for 25 years, and actually before that, I worked a few years out of South Beach, and he was out there at the time. So he understands the struggles that not just Grayling, but the whole beach community had, getting them to this point where they're at with the RFA. And, you know, talking to people out there that I'm still in contact with, if they like what they've done.
And he said it was hard for them to find time to train their volunteers well, because it took so much time.
Yes.
And they have families and.
Life gets in the way.
Part of our, just because you mentioned it, part of our training plan includes, and you have again a group of firefighters in the back, is taking them, their knowledge and expertise, kind of like you alluded to, and teaching the new volunteers, just like they teach new paid guys that come in, if they don't have experience. So you've got one on the back. Kelly's really old. Petey's really, I mean, you've got 100-year-old Petey, 100 years plus of experience. Mitch is young.
Well, I have
So
to
you can
say-
pull that knowledge from them, like Kathy was mentioning.
I have to say that we have used our volunteers more than probably anybody here for my husband. Many times. And I'm so grateful for them. But I want to make sure that everybody has that help down the line too.
And I will tell you, and I've said this to anybody that's ever asked, when I was a captain and on the line, and if I had a structure fire and I called up Cosmopolis, I could trust them to go in and do what I wanted them to do, right? I knew that they could go do it. I didn't question it. I didn't have any hesitation. I can tell you that if I called other volunteer fire departments, the only thing I wanted them to do was sit outside and feed water to somebody. I mean, literally hand a bottle of water because I didn't feel comfortable. The staff that was in Cosmopolis for years was very confident and appropriate, and I trusted them to do what they needed to do. It's unfortunate, the situation that happened a year ago. And I can't make them all come back. I'm trying to offer a solution.
One other thing that this, Mike Reichenberger said was, it's about the new recruits. Oh, that, they're not getting, they weren't getting any, it's hard to get the recruits because the younger people that are coming up now, you know how hard it is for them to even get to work and do jobs and.
They don't like that physical work thing.
You know, to get people to come and volunteer, it's not that group like joined the Lions Club and joined theater years ago.
So, then that is a challenge.
It's a change in the culture.
Yeah, volunteerism across the board is down, not just fire service, but all over, no matter what it is. So it's, you're competing for those few that still have that drive and desire to do it. So,
Hold on, Don, right behind you.
Yeah, I just got a question about, so this plan is creating a whole lot of new set of jobs. You got the non-voting board member, you got the voting one, you got the planning coordinator, you got a fire chief, 2 assistant chiefs, and then you get into the admin, HR, financial services, IT, risk management.
So we're only
all of
creating
this, all this.
4 jobs?
How much? No, you're gonna need all this contracting, it says it right in the plan, so we're not pulling.
So let me
No,
address
wait,
this.
let me finish.
Okay.
The question is, you guys aren't getting all the money for the fire department. How much is all this money that we gotta give? And you're not gonna have all these people starting January 1. So we're gonna have to pay into it, and then we gotta pay our people to do what they're still doing until you guys can fill those jobs. So we are kind of paying twice, and how much is actually going to all of this, and how much is actually going to the fire department?
So when I pulled the budgets, within the budgets, costs are allocated out to each department. So I pulled those costs that Aberdeen and Hoquiam are currently paying for finance, for legal, for everything, and I included that in the budget. So, and that's within the $50 per month. So the RFA, yes, they will have to hire their own attorney, but other than that, in the plan, there is gonna be an interlocal agreement between the city of Hoquiam, city of Aberdeen, and city of Causey to actually provide services.
So
Hoquiam will
we're
provide.
paying you guys and then still paying our people to do what they're already still doing, right?
What do you mean?
Is that what you're saying? As far
You're
as our
not
fire
good-
department, they're paying for our fire department right now, doing whatever paperwork Julie's gotta do, she's doing, you know, and so she's getting paid to do that.
No.
So the city, or the RFA is going to provide each city with a service. One is, fire marshal services. I'm just gonna narrow it down to one, right? Fire marshal services, that's a value, okay? Corey, in the plan, is gonna provide finance services to the RFA. She's a value. We're sharing services to keep costs down.
And Aberdeen is gonna provide HR services.
Basically in kind, just.
So it's a trade of services.
Yeah, that's a good way
It's
to
a
put
trade
it.
of public resources.
So more work put on people who are already doing it, which means they're probably not rates.
We've already discussed the people that it will affect, and people are
I
okay.
don't, Julie's still here. Julie is familiar with the maintenance programming of volunteers. So we're gonna use Julie to provide that service to the RFA, and in return, I'm just sticking with the one position, a fire marshal.
You sure?
Fire marshal.
He's making me laugh. We're gonna provide the fire marshal service. There's other services back and forth. Emergency management, each city's comprehensive emergency management plan. The RFA will be a part of that. There's other things. Going back to your additional positions. I said in the beginning, we're hiring 4. Those are 4 new positions, right?
Yeah, but it also says that the board will choose the chief and the fire chief. Now, are you just new ones?
Of
or-
current staff.
So if you read it, it says of the current administrative staff. So you have me and Hoquiam as a chief,
I'm here.
Dave and Aberdeen as a chief, Assistant Chief Ryan Nodell, and Nick. They're going to pick from that group, I didn't mean it like that, sorry, Nick. And of course Nick. The commissioners are going to pick, so we are already 3 chiefs. They're gonna say, Ryan, you're the chief, Matt, you're the chief of operations, and Dave, you're the chief of, the fire marshal side of things. No new positions, cause we already work for them. The medical services officer is, in Hoquiam, is the young lady sitting next to you, and Brad's not here. Ryan was that position in Aberdeen. They're doing it over here, Nick's doing it for Kazi. One person is going to do that from this group of people.
It's not a, yeah.
It's a new position, but we're gonna take an experienced firefighter and put 4 new firefighters on the bottom that, to be honest with you, are gonna be the guy driving the, or the woman driving the ambulance. Those are the new positions. We clarified it earlier, I thought, and this keeps coming up, is the commissioners are not career positions. They are not making $96,000 a year. They're making $9,960 a year. Maximum per year. They need to be compensated in some way. And, you know, the comment was made in the last one in Aberdeen, well, they're gonna be making a ton in this first year because there's gonna be so many meetings, because so many things have to be set up. The limit per day is $114.
Set by RCW.
So whether they work for an hour on a project or 14 hours on a project, they're getting paid the same amount. We're not creating new career positions, but city council, county commissioners, PUD commissioners, hospital board commissioners, they all get a stipend or a...
Look at Tom Casey's. It's not 96,000 per year. I can bring it down.
I believe it.
Just telling you.
So, what was the
Meals,
other?
mileage.
What was the other one I wanted to address?
No,
That was it, okay. There was another hand.
I'm sorry, really quick before we, there was one over here earlier. Did we have a question over here? I just want to make sure we didn't miss the chief's order.
I wanted to drill down in the budget just a little bit. Earlier, there was commentary to the effect that our $1.50 per thousand was gonna add up to $700,000 or $800,000. I don't think that's correct. You have a number?
We only collect total $440,000 to $450,000 a year.
I got $355,000.
That's what I got too,
Yeah.
355.5. So, right now, we're paying Aberdeen $22,000 a month. Multiply that out and subtract it from 355, I think that's about $90,000 in addition to what we're paying Aberdeen, something like that. So we're gonna be paying the 355, that's diverted from our general fund, right? So we're gonna be paying about $90,000 a year more than we're paying this year.
Correct.
We're paying Aberdeen the lesser amount, the 2 something. Okay, and then on top of that,
But you're also missing out of the budget that the salaries paid to staff, so you have, I mean, they're volunteer, but they still they still get a stipend. There's still some benefits. There's insurance, there's training fees. So there is a lot more costs associated with just contracting with Aberdeen. Your volunteer staff, they are phenomenal, but technically they're not free. I mean, don't get me wrong, they work hard and they don't get paid much, but they do get something.
okay, so some of that $90,000 is eaten up by additional costs other than the contract.
Correct.
Okay, and then we're gonna be paying the $50 a month utility fee.
Correct.
Which is an increase of about $22 a month.
32 for Kazi.
32. Okay. So that's about another $25,000, isn't it? Something like that.
Sure, I can't do the math off my head, but yeah.
Well, I just wanted to take a look at that to see, yeah, and I don't know anything about the Aberdeen and Hoquiam numbers, but I wanted to take a look at it and see if there's any way to reduce that $50. That $50 is a big hit
So I did do a look at, so in order to reduce it, I did look to see if it is capable of doing, like, for Aberdeen and Hoquiam, I don't know about Causey, we actually offer a senior citizen low-income discount. Causey does not, but, I mean, that would be easily fixed. I mean, we could provide the policies, procedures, and the numbers to do that. So we do offer that, and that's another discount on the program. When it comes to, like, for instance, transport fees were brought up earlier for transport fees. We also have another discount program available for anyone, who is charged a transport fee if they're unable to pay their bill and they're low income. And that's not senior low income, that's just low income. So, there are discount programs available, so, but other than that,
So those are things that the RFA board could enact?
yes.
Okay.
And just to go to that really quick, those are some of those things I referred to earlier that we can't make those decisions for the board. The board actually has to say, yes, we're going to do that. So that's why you don't see it in the plan, is because we legally cannot dictate that level of direction to that board within the plan itself.
And I see one more hand up, so let's just do one last question.
I'm sure it was probably already answered, but what year was this, the 1.5%, what year for taxes was that based on, our assessment?
It was based on 2023 taxes.
Okay, because I know we took a huge hit on that, a huge hit, which I know a lot of people in this room probably did as well. So, yeah.
One question about this building.
Very last question. We're done. You asked politely.
So the building, this Causey building, does not go with the RFA, or how does that
So
work?
each city will negotiate what's best for the city and the RFA. So each city will negotiate as to what they want to do with their building with the RFA commissioners. So for instance, if Causey wants to keep the building, then they can keep the building. Hoquiam, we want to keep our fire stations, so we're going to keep them. And so, like, for instance, if the RFA does not utilize them anymore, then Hoquiam will take them back.
So they'll be
First
given,
right to refusal.
the city of Hoquiam will say, here, you get a 100-year lease on your fire stations, right? But if you ever, for whatever reason, decide to move out of that fire station, the city of Hoquiam gets it back.
But Aberdeen might want to get rid of theirs, or, you know, so like, it's. So if Aberdeen, so it's up to each city and the RFA commissioners to negotiate that
So
contract.
basically, they would lease this building to the RFA. I mean, RFA would
Lease it for $1 or a
Okay,
penny or
whatever,
trade for
you know,
services, it wouldn't actually be a cost associated.
Okay, okay, say that happens. Then who pays insurance and maintenance and et cetera, on the building?
That's all negotiated in that.
Yeah, it's all negotiated in that contract.
So
Probably Cosmopolis, more than likely.
I would say probably the RFA.
Probably the
All the
RFA would do
examples we've
insurance
been
on this
used
building, would
looking
do
at.
maintenance on the
Generally, what
building.
you see in these types of agreements is that it's your building, it's the RFA's building, and you take care of it. And you pay the utilities, you do the repairs, whatever it might be.
You're saying the RFA or the city?
The RFA would pay it. And what it is what they're getting at with Hogan's, for example, is they have that ability that if the RFA then moves out, it's just, hey, it reverts back to the city. So, and that is that's the common, practice. There's another term I was thinking of, that when you see these little long-term leases like that.
When you say RFA moves out, do you mean Hoquiam goes away from the RFA?
No, so like, for instance, let's say 20 years from now, the RFA wants to build a brand new headquarters station, wherever it is. Well, okay, or they want to build a new headquarters in Hoquiam, then they move their headquarters, or they move the Hoquiam station, one of the Hoquiam stations, which there's no all 5 stations are staying in place. I'm not trying to start rumors, so please don't assume that.
Very hypothetical.
Yes, very
Not-
hypothetical. So if the RFA were to stop using that building,
And that's up to commissioners?
yes, well, yes.
Everything boils down to commissioners.
Yes, so so for instance, I know that Hoquiam, we wanna keep our building, so if the RFA says, we're not gonna utilize this building whatsoever anymore, and the RFA takes all their stuff out, okay, we want that building back. I mean, in Hoquiam, we have one big block, right? So we don't wanna give it, like, we want control of what's on our block. So,
Same thing here, it's all the city block, so.
yeah.
But there's no guarantee there'll be a Cosby person that handles commissioners, so there's voted in.
There's no guarantee there's gonna be a Hoquiam person or an Aberdeen.
Yeah, it could be
It's
all
that
three.
long.
So, but they're voted in by all three.
Again, okay, so thank you all for coming, we really appreciate all your input. Please reach out if you have any more questions. And let me